Hello and welcome into Addison to 35th podcast, brought to you by the great folks at Just Baseball Media Group. This is your Chicago Baseball Authority. My partner is Ryan Herrera. Usually he does the Cubs stuff. Me, Herb Lawrence, I do the White Sox stuff. And today we're going to have our last of our AL Central previews with Just Baseball's own Jarrett Parker. Jarrett Parker. I almost got you wrong. Jarrett Perkins. My bad. He's a college baseball and draft analyst here at Just Baseball. You can follow him on the Twitter sphere at Jarrett CP1. Jarrett, really appreciate you joining me today for this Royals talk.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Excited to be here, talk a little Royals baseball. Season's right around the corner, so excited to get started.
Yeah, and the thing about the Royals, and I expressed this with other guys I've done the previews with, is no matter where the Royals are in the standings, good, bad, and different, they always give the White Sox all the troubles that they want. And that's why one of my least favorite teams in the AL Central is the Royals. And another reason why the Royals are one of my least favorite is because we, as the White Sox, always go to the Royals and try to get their hand-me-downs.
Yeah.
Like a couple years ago when they were looking for a manager, a guy who had been there for 9 years, and the Royals and JJ Piccolo was like, nah, get out of here, Pedro Grifol. We're going to go to Matt Quatraro. And I should have known something at that time. I was like, okay, that person's been in the building, been there on the bench for 9 years. And they're like, no, we don't want him. So I'm a big time, or used to be a staunch believer in managers don't matter that much during games. That guy and also Tony La Russa in his second iteration as White Sox manager have changed my mind in that. Firstly, how are you as far as managers and their effect on baseball games? And secondly, how is Matt Quatraro doing as the Kansas City Royals bench boss?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can vary, right? Like depending on how much talent you have on the team, like the manager's impact. For me, looking at Matt Quatraro, I think he's had a massive impact on this team and the pitching staff as well. I mean, when we had the Mike Matheny era and the Cal Eldridge as the pitching coach era, like the managerial decisions were always in question, and Cal Eldridge just could not get anything out of the pitching staff, no matter what he tried. Brian Sweeney has come in. I think Zach Bove is the assistant. They have completely revamped how this pitching staff works. You kind of see it in the rotation with Cole Reagans, Michael Waka, and Seth Lugo all coming together after starts and like going over their starts and actually using data and analytics and all these things that you kind of would expect to be there. But now this coaching staff is really kind of implementing it. And I think Quatraro, same thing. You can kind of see it in his bullpen decisions, right? Like Lucas Ursig is not your typical closer. He comes out kind of in fireman situations. Now that they have Esteves, they might have a guy who's like solidified for the ninth inning role. But Ursig was coming out in the sixth, the fifth, the seventh, the eighth, like any inning that the Royals potentially could be in trouble. Lucas Ursig was doing it. And so I think Quatraro takes a lot of decisions like that. And you saw a kind of the lineup switching around a lot. He was trying to find ways to make things work. And so I think he played a significant role in terms of the Royals' success last year.
And the thing is, too, with the Royals, this offseason, I was kind of shocked because as a White Sox fan, I watch Brady Singer go out there and do the job. I mean, I know he struggled a couple of years ago where he kind of got demoted in, I think, 2023 and found himself after a while down there. And then in 2024, awesome year for me. I thought he was solid as heck, giving you 180 innings. And I know he's kind of a weird guy. So when he got traded for Jonathan India this offseason, I was like, a youngish arm that's giving you 180 innings for a guy who had a decent year in Cincinnati last year in Jonathan India. But if you ask Reds fans, he didn't live up to the expectations that they had. And I thought, in my estimation, just, one for one, I think the Reds got the better of the deal. But what was going on with Brady Singer? Was he something like off the field where it wasn't right, or the Royals just have 5 people they can throw out there as starters, and he was kind of a luxury?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. to your point of like the Royals just having a lot of depth at pitching, and the biggest issue the team had last year was the leadoff spot. They fluctuated everybody you could think of in the leadoff spot, trying to find someone who could kind of be a table setter. Like Michael Garcia did it, Nick Lofton did it, Michael Massey did it. I think Bobby Witt Jr. even got a couple games there because they were just trying to find someone to do something. But Jonathan India is a guy who had a 357 on base percentage last year. He had an on base percentage he has a career on base percentage of 352. So like he's a table setter, and that's what this lineup was missing all last year. They just had no one who could get something done in front of Bobby Witt. And I think this spring he went absolutely off. He had a 1067 OPS, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs. Like I think he can get himself back, I think, to that 2022 season or 23 season where he kind of really went off, and his 21 season too, where he was just kind of one of the better second basemen in the league. But they need a guy who's going to see a lot of pitches, who's going to get on base. And I think moving Singer was the easiest move for them to do because they have a guy like Chris Bubick, who they're now putting into the rotation. And I think his last spring start, he went 5 innings, 8 Ks, 1 earned. He was dominant out of the bullpen, so it's hard to move him from the bullpen to the rotation. But they just had that depth. They have Kyle Wright coming back from an injury. They went out and re-signed Michael Lorenzen. They have a bunch of other arms in AAA like Noah Cameron and Steven Zobak who can potentially play a role in the starting rotation as well. So I think they felt comfortable from that depth standpoint. And you look at Singer's underlying data, it's not the best. I think his expected ERA was over 4, which makes me worried in Cincinnati how he's going to pitch in that ballpark. But I think they've always liked Singer. I just think that the lineup is where this team is kind of the weakest and where they needed to address something, and they just kind of went from the area where they had the most depth.
You know, after last year, it's undoubtedly that Bobby Witt Jr. is the best player in the AL Central, one of the best players in the AL, period.
Yeah.
By the end of 2025, will Bobby Witt Jr. be one of the best, if not the best player in Major League Baseball, including Shohei Ohtani?
Man, like I don't know if he can surpass Shohei. That's hard to do when you got a guy doing it on both sides. Like especially if Ohtani pitches again this year. But what he did last year, man, like if you go to the Savant page, he's like the 99th percentile in every single category, basically except for chase and walk percentage. And it's just insane to watch what he does on the field every day. He seems to get better every single year. He kind of plays too, like low key, like he's not a flashy guy. He's not going out there showing everybody up. He kind of just goes out and plays baseball, wants to play baseball, loves the game, and just goes out and competes every single day. And like having that guy that just can constantly get better every single year and is just doing whatever it takes to find his way to unlock the next level. Like even on the base pass, he's probably not the strongest base runner in terms of reads, but he's still getting 30 stolen bases because he's just so freakishly fast. Like Michael Garcia is probably the best base runner on this team in terms of like jumps and reads and things like that. But Bobby Witt's athleticism, the speed, the power, like everything just combined, like I think could be the best, at least player in the American League this year.
And the thing is, you just talked about chase rate, and the thing that drives me absolutely insane as a White Sox fan is a player that is in the first percentile each year in chase rate. You throw a ball in the stadium, Salvador Perez is going to be swinging. And they're like, you know what? Here's a fastball down the middle, crushed.
Yeah.
Why do people continue to throw pitches to him where he's proven to you? Well, last year, I think his walk rate went up from the first percentile to the 30th percentile. So he was actually a little bit patient. But firstly, why do people keep on pitching to him? And secondly, how does Salvador Perez keep on doing this? I think he's like 34 now, about to turn 35, and he hasn't stopped being a great hitter.
Yeah, and like Salvi goes and wants to play 162 games a year. That's the other thing that's crazy about him. Behind the backstop, you can see like as age, he's getting more. He's chasing a lot more probably than he used to. Like he's not as good defensively behind the dish. I think he's blocks above average is like 20th percentiles. Pop time's not what it used to be. Like he used to have a cannon and just throwing everybody out. But yeah, every time I watch an at bat, I'm like, throw him a slider away. Like he's gonna swing at it every single time. It's like Javi Baez basically every time you're watching him in the plate. But when he squares one up, man, like he hits it like a mile away. Like that home run derby he was in that one year, like no one knew how much power Salvia actually had until he like showcased it in that home run derby and was like competing with the top power hitters in the league. Um, he's just a catalyst to this team. Like he's the veteran, he's the leader. You kind of know what he is, so you're either going to get a strikeout or you're going to get a home run. He is what he is at this point in his career. He still finds a way to do it every single year. Like even for the bad chase rate, he still hit 27 bombs last year. He hit 271. Like he is still a productive guy. I think that's probably where this lineup's the weakest is like having a guy around like in between Salvi and Vinny that can kind of be that producer. But yeah, I mean, Salvi's kind of is what he is, and he's exciting to watch every single year. You're happy that he's out there. Like, the team definitely has a hole if he's not in that lineup, regardless of the first percentile chase rate. But he's just a fun guy.
And the thing is, too, I love going down to the Kauffman Stadium because I got to see in person the Pasquatch. That is the greatest thing I think any ballpark does for a player in particular. I mean, the guy looks like the Harry from the Hendersons Pasquatch. And the thing is, you don't see it often enough because Vinny Pasquantino has been often injured, and I think he's still injured this spring training. What is his ceiling if he gives you 140 games a year? Because every time I see him play, he's hitting the ball really hard.
Yeah, I think Vinny, the best thing about Vinny is like he's the opposite of Salvi, right? Like he does not swing at everything. He does not chase. He's barreling everything. He's getting walked. It's probably one of the better hit tools on the team. He's just doesn't whiff. He doesn't strike out. He squares things up. Like Vinny Pasquantino is probably one of the better pure hitters. I think the biggest thing, like he's talked about it on a podcast before, he wants to stop grounding into double plays. That's the advantage of like, okay, he's not striking out, but then he grounded into a crap ton of double plays last year. And so I think that's something he wants to address, getting the ball on the line a little bit more. And I think that's kind of his ceiling. Like if he can figure out how to lift the ball just a little bit more, he already does it quite a bit as a hitter. He had 19 home runs last year, and 496 at bats. But I think he's a guy that is kind of working his tail off to become that best pure hitter. I think he had 95 RBIs or something crazy like that last year, and he didn't even play the full season. He has made it his goal to be on the field the 162 games a year. He wants to be out there every single day. So like for me, like, I think the ceiling are still a little bit to untap there in terms of power, in terms of production. But if he's fully healthy and can go out there and just play 162, like that's huge. He's the one driving in Bobby and the leadoff guy every single time. So having him is just going to be huge for this team.
You know, last year in the draft in 2024, I wanted the White Sox firstly to pick Braden Montgomery. Luckily, they have gotten him in the trade for Garrett Crochet in this offseason. The second guy I wanted them to get is Jack Caglione.
Yeah.
It was so disappointing when I saw him go to the Royals because I know in that ballpark with that prodigious power, and we saw it all spring training, he's going to hit a bunch of home runs, and it's going to be a person we have to deal with for the next 10 years down there in Kansas City. Firstly, when is he going to be coming up? And then secondly, do you think his power from Florida will transfer to the major leagues this year or next?
Yeah, I mean, so I said this on draft day that I thought he would make a Wyatt Langford ascend to the big leagues. I haven't seen a guy at the college level have the plate coverage that he does. It's kind of insane. Like his chase rate's super high, but he doesn't strike out. Like he cut the strikeout rate significantly last year at Florida. And when he chases, he's making contact. And the thing is like he was like putting balls out of the stadium that were 2 balls off the plate, basically, the opposite field. And so like the power is just absolutely nuts. I guess the concern definitely for me is like as he faces more advanced pitching, right? Like when he's in the college baseball, he's not facing elite arms every single day, like really, really good arms in the SEC, but you're not facing major league pitchers every single day. So like, does that chase rate become a concern as he kind of moves up levels, plays in the big leagues, and those kind of things? So I think the power plays at the big league level. I think he's going to potentially be up by June if he just kind of skyrockets his way through the minor leagues. Like if he just starts tearing up AA like he did spring training this year and just putting every ball 118 exit mile an hour exit velo out of the stadium. Like I just think that he is going to make it to the big leagues. And I think there's a reason why the Royals are putting him in the outfield too. They want the fastest path to the big leagues for him and think he can probably make that Wyatt Langford ascend as well. Because they know they got Vinny at first base. They now have Mark Canha too, who can play some first base as well. And so I think for them, putting Cags in the outfield is like the fastest way. They told him, hey, you're not going to pitch either because we want you to get to the big leagues as soon as possible. And he's even willing to stop pitching because he wants to get to the big leagues as quick as possible as well. So I think everybody believes in the bat from the front office down, and I think we could see him by May, June time.
Two-part question here, and it's mostly about the starting rotation. I talked to Chris Castellani the other day from Detroit about his starting rotation being probably the best in the AL Central, and I got the Twins and the Royals for number 2. I think the number 1 guy for the Royals, Cole Reagans, might be just as good as the number 1 pitcher who won the Cy Young Award last year in Tarek Skubal. What are your thoughts, firstly, on the rankings from AL Central teams as far as the starting rotations? And do you think Cole Reagans can take that award from Tarek Skubal this year?
Yeah, I think the Tigers are. I've talked about with David Lesky about this. Here, he runs a Royals blog, and we were kind of talking about how we thought they were really, really close, but like Skubal kind of brings that rotation to the next level. And having a guy like Jackson Jobe in your 5, like that's pretty nice. And so like I just think like maybe Lugo Walker are a little bit stronger than Flaherty Olsen, but when you look at the top of it's Lugo Walker a little bit stronger than Flaherty Olsen. But when you look at the top, like Skubal versus Reagans, I think Reagans is close, but man, Skubal's just lights out. And then you look at the bottom, like between Mize and Jobe versus like Bubic and Lorenzen. Like Bubic maybe greater than Mize in the future here. We have to see what he has to do for a full season. But like Jobe versus Lorenzen or Marsh or whoever the Royals are kind of throwing out there, I think really gives the Tigers the edge. But yeah, Reagans, I mean, like props to the Royals front office for finding that guy. Like I remember when that Chapman trade happened, I was like, oh, Rony Cabrera is like the star of this deal. Like you're getting like a dart throw DSL guy who's absolutely raking. And then next thing you know, Cole Reagans is all of a sudden putting in Cy Young type seasons, like out of nowhere. But I remember reading an article that talked that the front office like looked into Reagans, everything from his like mindset to his physicality to his diet to his weight program, and like did a full like on scouting report on Reagans to figure out what they were getting for him. And he's just turned out to be electric. The pitch mix, the stuff that's all like 60 plus. I mean, it's fun. It's electric factory to watch every single start. And like the Royals haven't had a guy like this since like Zach Greinke, basically, that was going out there every 5th day. And you knew that he was going to keep you in the game. So it's just been a blast to watch as a Royals fan. And it's just been awesome.
Two-part question again. This is mostly about the bullpen. The Royals went out this offseason and got Carlos Estevez, Charlie Sheen, and also already have Lucas Erceg as a dominant, not really a closer, just a guy who you put into spots, as you said. Any spot that he needed to be would be in the game. Is there a determined closer there? Is Carlos Estevez the guy, or are they going to do with Carlos Estevez like they did with Lucas Erceg last year and have both of them just do high leverage situations?
Yeah, Quatraro never really had a solidified closer last year, and I think part of that was because they didn't really have Erceg until the second half of the season, and they just didn't really have a guy who could go out there and really dominate in the 9th. Now that they have Erceg and Estevez and they have Hunter Harvey back healthy, like I think the 3 of those guys are going to be your 7, 8, 9 in some kind of order. I think Estevez will get the 9th. And I think he'd be more of a guy that, because his stuff has kind of ticked down a little bit as he's gotten older. And I kind of feel like he's a guy you can kind of throw out there every single 9th inning, and hopefully he'll just go get the save regardless of how close a game is. But I think like in those really, really close ball games, maybe like the 1-run games, I think Erceg is going to be the guy. He's just like an electric factory back there. He's got the best stuff. And he's got the best mindset for it. So I feel like if you have like a 1-run game or you're looking for the fireman role, kind of as we talked about earlier in the 6th, 7th, or 8th, I think Erceg is going to be that guy. And then you always have like Estevez back as a backup plan. If you had to use Erceg in the 7th or 8th for that fireman role, you can just go Estevez in the 9th. But I think this bullpen is just overall way better than it was last year. You're getting a full season of Ursack, full season of Harvey. Daniel Lynch looked dominant last year in the bullpen. Angel Zerpa was again amazing this spring, and he was like 100 miles an hour in late in September. I remember watching the wild card game. He was coming out pumping 99 to 100. And he's just looked so much better this spring as well. So excited about the bullpen besides Chris Stratton, who's just kind of hanging out there, getting $4.5 million or however much he is. So outside of Stratton, like the bullpen looks really, really good.
You know, out of all the Midwest cities, besides Chicago, Kansas City is probably my favorite just because it's so eclectic. It's so great. And the ballpark itself at Kauffman Stadium is so awesome. I just loved it. I know it's a little older and they're trying to get a new stadium. I don't understand it because the K is perfect with the water spectacular out there, the Hall of Fame in left field, all the things in Kansas City, and of course the barbecue, all the good food that you get out there. Like, firstly, what's the status of what's going on with the K and they're trying to move downtown? And secondly, the Kansas City as itself, I know they kind of play like an Independence, Missouri instead of the actual Kansas City proper, but tell the folks, like, if they're going to a game at the K, what they can expect down there in Missouri.
Yeah, I mean, I went for the first time to the K as a Royals fan this past year, and it was just such an awesome experience. Like, the stadium is absolutely incredible. I get why they're wanting to move it downtown because it is a pain to get to in and out of. Like, waiting for an Uber after that game was absolutely. There's like one road that basically goes into the stadium and one road that goes out of the stadium. But outside of that issue, like, it's just such a cool atmosphere. Like you said, the fountains, you kind of go out into center field where the Hall of Fame is and the fountains are, and it's just kind of a cool like sunset that's happening out that way that kind of reflects off the fountains. And the whole entire city of Kansas City, like I went to a Cardinals game and Kansas City Royals game during that trip, and I was like, wow, I really like Kansas City a lot better than St. Louis.
Yes.
And it's just got a really eclectic downtown area, very artsy, like arts district. Then you have the Negro League Museum there as well. That's absolutely incredible. So if you ever go to Kansas City, you have to visit that museum because it was one of the coolest experiences that I had. It's so interactive. Like you learn about, like, takes you kind of through the whole entire story of the Negro Leagues, and it's just very, very cool. So, and they got the Jazz Museum right next door to the Negro Leagues Museum. You can go into that as well. It's just an awesome place and place to visit. So if you're gonna go to a Royals game, you got to go for a couple days so you can kind of check out everything.
Second last thing I got for you, and I really appreciate you joining us, Jared. I've been asking all my AL Central people to rank their least favorite organization in the AL Central besides theirs to their most tolerable. So myself, I have the Twins at the top because the Piranhas, and every year Twins fans kind of chirp. Then I have the Royals, as I told you before. Doesn't matter if the Royals are good or bad, they're going to beat on the White Sox, and I hate that. Then I don't know why I don't hate the Guardians and or Tigers more. I should, because the 90s Indians used to torment the White Sox, and the Tigers in 2000 had that fight with the White Sox, and I still hate Robert Fick to this day. So 1 through 4, from your least favorite to tolerable fans / organization, AL Central for you, Jared.
Yeah, I mean, so I'd say until last year, I didn't have the Guardians last, but now I have them last because all I kept hearing from Guardians fans all season long last year was that the Royals run wasn't real. Like, I had Guardians fans chirping me in May, like that they were going to fall to the bottom of the division by the time like June, July hit. And so I was just like, all right, you guys are barely treading water there up at the top of the division, but you're going to keep coming after the Royals saying that like none of what they're doing is real. They're going to lose one guy to an injury and then they're all of a sudden going to tank. So I think Guardians are now number 1 for me. I'd say 2. It's kind of hard because like I don't have any issues with really the other organizations in the division. Twins maybe, but like I just feel bad for the Twins every year because it's like they should be the number 1 team in the division, and then everybody gets hurt by like April 15th, and then next thing you know, they're now falling to the bottom. So I'd say probably put the Twins there. Then the Tigers, like I have nothing with the Tigers. So they've been kind of treading water since the Javi Baez signing, and hopefully they kind of turning things around. Had some really, really good signs last year, which was awesome to see for them as an organization. So, and then, yeah, White Sox probably number one. They have all the former Royals in the front office and the coaching staff on the team. So it's kind of
The bad Royals.
yeah, it's interesting to kind of see all those guys go on. I think to last year was like Nicky Lopez, a bunch of others that were all on that team. So hard to not like the White Sox, and it's hard. I feel bad for the White Sox because of the front office. It seems like things are turning around in terms of the farm system and things like that. So hopefully some signs kind of moving forward of positivity.
It sounds like it's pretty much unanimous. It's like kind of feeling sorry for the White Sox and how they are so bad right now, and that's understandable. I hope the White Sox can catapult to the top of this list in 10 years, because it won't happen in 5 because we got a lot of work to do. But that's neither here nor there. Last thing I do have for you is, if you are at the end of September and you had to predict where the Royals will be in the AL Central and the AL as a whole, what do you think the Royals would do in 2025 with this young team that they have and the great pitching staff that they have?
So yeah, I threw out my season predictions this morning, and I picked 91 wins in first place. I think Jack Haggs is going to make an impact sooner than later, and I believe that the Royals will make some trades at the deadline. I think they had a frustrating offseason. They were trying to get guys like Taylor Ward, Starling Marte. They're in on these kind of like 5, 6, 7 type bats to really lengthen the lineup, and just couldn't get them done. And I think they're going to be able to get a move like that done at the deadline. Maybe not Ward or Marte, depending on where like the Angels and Mets are competing. But I think they're going to make a push to improve this team. They know the talent they have and how young it is, and they know like the ceiling for the rotation, like Lugo and Walker, aren't getting any younger. So they need to get as much as they can out of those guys, and they're going to try to capitalize on that window.
That is Jared Perkins. Jared Perkins from Just Baseball, college baseball and draft analyst, and you need to follow him if you're a White Sox fan. The White Sox have the 10th pick overall this year in 2025, and hopefully the first pick next year. So tell the folks where they can find you on the social medias and what you're doing out there on the Twitter sphere.
Yeah, so you can find us on find me on Jared CP1, and then On the Clock is our college baseball MLB draft podcast. You can find that on the clock _1 on X, and I believe it's On the Clock 1 on Instagram, YouTube. So we got interviews with a bunch of the MLB draft prospects. We got a top 200 board for the 2025 MLB draft rankings that Tyler Jennings, who's our MLB draft lead, has absolutely crushed. The board's got interviews, scouting reports. We're going to have live video. Tyler's out at the fields all the time. I'm out at the fields. So we're getting live video from all those prospects, so you can kind of get a sense of what their game's like. So really comprehensive board that we're trying to bring to Just Baseball, so everybody can be really, really well prepared for the draft.
So that'll do it for our AL Central preview this week. I know you White Sox fans got to feel really jealous of all 4 of the teams in our division, even the Minnesota Twins, who didn't make the playoffs last year because of the collapse and all the injuries they have. It looks like the Twins might be back unless, Royce Lewis is still hurt, but it has to be kind of frustrating as White Sox fans out here listening to these 4 gentlemen that we've had on and the teams that they cover and the teams that they like. And so hopefully, like I said, in 5 to 10 years, we can be at the top of the AL Central. But this year, it'll be fun to watch other teams in the AL Central do like they did last year, get into the playoffs and actually compete. So for Jared Perkins, you can follow him at JaredCP1 on Twitter. He is Just Baseball's draft analyst here. And my name is Herb Lawrence. I am at Ecknerwall23. That is my last name, Lawrence, spelled backwards with 2-3 for Robin Ventura. I'll have a White Sox preview myself with a solo show where I'm yelling for 30 minutes about the White Sox being so bad, and now I'm going to think they're going to finish with a worse record than they had last year. Yes, I do, because they have a worse actual roster. So for Jarrett, my name is Herb. Thank you for joining us here on Addison, the 35th podcast.